Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerdarchist Ted, and this evening I am joined by this lovely person over here.
Nerder Doug.
So tonight I heard we're talking about tragedy. So we're all about doing nasty evil things, right?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I didn't really have any strong feelings, particularly about the topic. It was just like we did comedy, so I threw out tragedy. The tragedy of that is I was hoping one of you would be like, I don't want to talk about that. But I'd be like, hey, at least I tried.
So
but you both went for it hook, line, and sinker. So
well, I've enjoyed the bit of a pairing that we've had recently with these topics. It's been pretty enjoyable to go through the scenario of things that rhyme or have similar meaning. Like
antonyms, I believe. Is that what those are? Antonyms.
Yes. But comedy and tragedy work well together. So when it got brought up, I'm like, all right, what am I gonna do? And as I started thinking about this, I'm like, well, obviously tragedy goes hand in hand with this, role-playing game hobby that we have. It's embedded in so many different characters' backstories. It's sewn throughout the scenarios of what can actually unfold throughout the game with character deaths and NPC betrayals, or just NPC deaths, or just general things that are going. But like after I hit that, I'm like, what else do I have to say on this topic? Like it seemed like obviously yes, and then it occurred to me to go down a different path, and something that I always like to come to these kind of chats with something to talk about, something to say, or some kind of like, hey, did you think about adding this into your game? I've brought up the different splat books that are out there, the different random roll charts and stuff that are out there. This time I'm bringing dice to the table.
Okay.
Now, have you played the Fantasy Flight Star Wars games at all?
No, but I'm familiar with them and they look cool and fun.
So they are great. You don't need to know anything about playing those games in order to understand what I'm talking about, because I'm going to give you the quick and dirty part that is necessary for this. Of their assortment of dice, they have some D12s. There is the challenge die and the proficiency die. Both of them are D12s, and both of them have a unique symbol that is only on each of these dice, and one represents something that's really awesome. On the proficiency die, there's a triumph, and on the challenge die, there is a despair. Now, a lot of times you've seen like people who want to use like, oh, well, what happens when you roll a critical hit? Can something cool happen? Or what happens when you roll a natural one? Can something bad happen? And I've played in games where crits are always fabulous and something can come of it. And I have played in games where every natural one means something horrible happens, which doesn't always fit games. As you get higher levels, you have more chances of rolling more dice, which definitely ups the odds of more bad things happening to you. I don't necessarily know whether I agree with that or not, but it is something that has been called to question many times. So you don't necessarily need to buy the Fantasy Flight Star Wars dice, but I encourage you to do so. I encourage you to play the game because it's fantastic, especially if you happen to love Star Wars as much as I do. Because when you're rolling these dice, and you can roll proficiency and challenge dice together, it's not mutually exclusive. If you roll a triumph, it automatically means you have succeeded in whatever you are attempting. If you roll a despair, regardless of whatever the rest of the dice say is an outcome, something bad happens. So what I bring to the table today is you can use these cool dice, and when you roll a natural 1, roll a challenge die, and if you roll a natural 20, roll the proficiency die. If you want to just use a D12, mark your numbers: 12 for triumph and 1 for despair, and all you need is one D12 set aside. If you happen to roll that natural one and then a despair, that's when something bad can happen. It's basically, like the third edition confirming a crit kind of scenario, but you could do things that are, a lot more fun, a lot more interesting, and it would be a way for the players to have more impact when they roll those crits, if they happen to roll well, or for when those natural ones happen, for something dreaded could come to pass. Now, I will say that with the challenge die in Star Wars, these only come up when something, when you're up against a powerful foe. If you're gonna, be fighting stormtroopers, they're usually not gonna have, a despair die that you're rolling. But when you're fighting Darth Vader, you absolutely would, So those are the kind of things to look at. So it wouldn't be every natural one. Like, oh my God, I made a knowledge check and somehow my ear fell off. What? No.
Yeah.
But when you're in clutch situations, and it can change the course of the game. Oh, well, I'm researching at a library for information for whatever this quest is. Well, if you roll a despair, well, perhaps that information doesn't exist. And the fact that you're looking for it, could mean that you have information that the entire library knows nothing about. And now all of a sudden you're suspect. Why are you looking for, this evil information? So the DM could take those kind of things, out there and have a lot of fun with it. So that is what I came to the table with. And I thought that would be a very fun and interesting way to play with the extra dice that, I already have, and to, kind of reminisce about the earlier systems and do a little bit of mishmash.
Yeah, so I had a few points to get up, but we brought up a lot of interesting ideas and thoughts there of like, getting ideas from other games and things like that. And I actually had it clicked for me too, because I'd been thinking like, David asked me like, well, what is we talked about like what a comedic game campaign is, entails and stuff, and I was thinking like, well, what a tragic campaign. I mean, it wouldn't want it to be dreary all the time and stuff too, right? I mean, or maybe you would, if you're into that. But just thinking about like those challenge die, and it started making me think. Well, first of all, a quick question: like those Genesis system dice, they're just the polyhedrals we know. But would you think it's fair to say that it's like if they had numbers on them, they'd probably be more like easy or accessible for people because like the symbols turn them on. Like the reason I ask is because it's like, well, you could sort of use those in any game, and I'm thinking of like, they make it esoteric out of what like in some games is just like great success, like failure, significant failure, and like tragic loss, right? Is that kind of like what that is? It just got fancy names for it. Like it's despair. It's like it just means a significant failure, or whatever. It's like a critical failure, basically.
So the Star Wars dice have they don't have the numbers to register that. So you have you have two different types of dice that roll for chance of success, and you have two different types of dice that roll for chance of failure. Mm-hmm. So your success dice have success and advantage, and then the triumph is on the proficiency die, and then the other ones have failure and disadvantage.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, though, at the end of the day, it's just a scale of that. It's like you're either great success, from great success to like despair.
Well, you can the one thing that I like about those dice, and I know this is diverting slightly off topic, you can succeed with a disadvantage. You can succeed with an advantage. So it's apart from the task at hand that can go either way. Other things can happen. you can have a triumph. You win spectacularly, yet something bad can still happen.
Right.
Or you can utterly fail, have nasty repercussions with disadvantages in the attempt, and then a despair on top of it.
Right.
So like if you roll really poorly, you can come out like, all right, I tried bad. I tried hard and nothing good came of it. I've injured a teammate. I've set myself up for a disadvantage for next turn, and like all of these bad things. So.
Yeah. So, a lot of, we've sort of framed these discussions in D&D, but, we obviously talk about a lot of other role-playing games. So it makes me think like, well, if you wanted to incorporate that kind of idea into your D&D game and have like a, even if you didn't want to just have it be like, like a tragic theme tone game the whole time, but to introduce like an added level of scale of challenge like that, maybe you just have the players, and everybody agree with this, just make all your rolls with disadvantage in the whole, like everything you do, right? Unless you have something that like that gives you advantage, then you can just make like a normal roll, right? And maybe you even come up with a little scale. It's like, well, if both the rolls would have succeeded, then that is like a great success. If one fails and one succeeds, then it's just like, like you said, like a failure with a, an upswing or something like that. It wouldn't be that hard. And, you could play with the results scale to sort of like turn that dial of like, how tragic do you want it to be? Do you want it to just be like, look, the world is against these characters? And when I was thinking of that earlier, it made me think of like, a lot of conversations see from players where it's like, oh, it's and DMs, where like, the games become too easy for players, and it's hard to challenge them. And while at the same time, there's a hell of a lot of like characters with tragic backstories that, it's like, well, if you really want to lay around the challenge and role play that, it's like if you want to truly embody a tragic hero where like the fate is literally against you and get supremely challenged in your D&D campaign, there you go. Maybe you play a Theros campaign and sort of like play with the supernatural gifts and things like that too as well.
So you mentioned the concept of the tragic story. Now I think you can't do a game where it's all tragedy all the time,
right?
Because I'm trying to think of the quote here, and I'm not even gonna try because it's gonna come out wrong or misquoted. But like you have to wait between the lashes so that you have time to let the sting sink in before you whip them again.
Yeah.
So like you got to stab, wait, and then twist the knife so that there's time. So it's this, the typical sine curve of, rising and falling, and, allow for success and then realize that, that success actually brought about this. Yeah. Well, now how do we fix that?
And the origin of the word itself means like to invoke catharsis by undergoing these events of suffering. And I think like in Greek it means like a pain that awakens pleasure. It's like you have these tragic moments, but if you persevere through them, which heroes do, or should want to do or strive to do, then you have a rich reward. So yeah, even to your point, even if the whole thing was super tragic, but have a damn good payoff as the DM at the end of that, if you're gonna have like a like a gut-wrenching slog,
So real quick, I'm going to answer, Clark or double underscores question. Why are we dressed like a cleric? This is just a hoodie. I got a whole bunch of nerdy things to, wear on set and what have you.
He wears it in public too.
I do, because I am that kind
yeah,
of nerd.
I would too.
So honestly, this was kind of purchased as more of a paladin gear than cleric, but whatever. So I'll totally take this as a war domain cleric for sure. If you wanna go that direction.
A lot of tragedy to be found there in war.
Indeed, but you're gonna do what you're gonna do. Gabriel is talking about don't give the challenge die to Fraginator because he would roll nothing but despairs. Fraginator's got worse luck than Dave when it comes to dice. So,
but to both their credit and players, that have the curse of bad rolling and stuff like that, and also from like a role playing sense too. It's like your character and you as the player like fail a lot, but it really makes those successes mean a lot more to you sometimes too, especially when they're like clutch or like if you're a lucky roller. Not that it's any less fun to greatly succeed, but I mean if you're somebody that's just like rolls out 20s or whatever just because that's the way it rolls sometimes in the RPG world, it can lose its luster. But yeah, I mean, if you roll like double crits or something like that or whatever, it's pretty exciting.
indeed. So, there's definitely a lot to, kind of play around with and have some fun with.
It's a great thing to incorporate into like a session zero or campaign start as a reason for the group to be together, as we've talked about many times, just any kind of connection, whether it's like familial or whatever. So it's like some great tragedy, maybe their homeland was destroyed, or more personal, like people they know were, maybe they're all had a loved one killed by a serial killer or something or whatever, in a dragon attack or for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, having that reason can make disparate people come together through tragedy, right?
That's entirely true. Like you've got to come across adversity to know what's on the other side. And speaking of that, we're not going to go over everything now, but we can't have all sadness all the time. So I will say that this is the first Monday of the month, so we do have the list to announce who will be playing with Doug this month. I've got the list in digital format this time. No trees killed this time, as well as the winner of this month's giveaway.
Is that the super mega big
That's
one?
the super mega giveaway, which I'm not going to hold everything up.
It's a lot.
But it's like over $300 worth of stuff. There's dice trays, there's books, there's minis. It's a lot of good stuff. I've already got a response back from the winner. They're excited, and it's going to go out to them soon. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I already sent the word out and got a few responses for the monthly one shot, which is going to be on Sunday, January 24th at 4 p.m. I don't have any other details yet because I frankly haven't decided what I want to do yet.
Sure, man. There's definitely lots of time on that.
Yeah.
Last month I was kind of a little behind the ball because I wasn't here for the first week of December and didn't actually get it done on time. So it's crazy. It's holidays and plague and what have you. But it is what it is.
Yeah, on a broad sense, just in a real world sense, it's somewhat of a tragedy that all DMs and GMs face, is just those pre-game like stresses that you just know, even when it's just a game and you've done it hundreds, thousands of times as a player or GM, you just always like, what if? That
is a tragedy, and it doesn't matter, how many people lift me up, and I don't want to use the term "put me on a pedestal," although I've been told I'm a great GM by a lot of people. I always
very encouraging.
I always, question myself, question my abilities. And I was also, I was thrown on the bus, thrown under the bus today, for our holiday, New Year's Eve weekend. Everybody in the immediate family got to pick. This is what we're going to do. Everybody gets to pick one thing. My daughter picked No Thank You Evil, which is why it's, not here behind me on the shelf. Okay. And, some behavior issues happened and we didn't wind up playing till today. But the problem was, based on how the events had flowed, I didn't think it was happening. I wasn't prepared. And now all of a sudden the box is shoved at me. All right, it's time to play. I'm trying to get my daughter's new character sheet, together. Meanwhile, my wife, who is not super thrilled at playing No Thank You Evil, is twiddling her thumbs. My son is like bored and I'd rather be reading a book right now than doing this. So I was flummoxed. I, looked through the resources and pulled out some of the, ready-made adventure cards. And the first one I gave, I'm like, oh, this will be fun. I think the kids will like that. And they were not interested at all. And I'm like, so like, I'm trying to figure things out. I'm trying to help my daughter fill out her character sheet, and it was not going well. We had fun. It was shorter than what my daughter wanted, but they had an adventure. My son got to buy the Tyrannosaurus axe. He was happy.
Oh, that's a great name.
It is an axe that both heads are T-Rex heads.
Oh, wow.
It bites for an extra point of damage over a regular, sized weapon. But when it's not being used in melee, the heads fall asleep and then snore so loudly that they wake themselves up.
That's pretty fun. I've been chunk by chunk going through Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So like that's always fresh on my mind. And while there isn't anything directly about like tragedies or tragic things in there that I've come across, the most recent thing I did was the group patrons section, which I like that book a lot, and that's fun. And sort of in the same way I was talking about, like, tying the party together, a patron can also, maybe they have their own tragic story that appeals to the group, and they have them, that's their patron. It could be like, even if it was just some eccentric, wealthy person that's like a tragedy survivor or something, like cooped up in a creaky old mansion on the hill or something.
Indeed.
And that's the situation, that's the sort of thing where like you might reveal that over the campaign, like, well, who is this guy, or this whoever they are, creature, be something that the players could learn about, and then whether it's the characters or even like players are sort of working through things in games or NPCs. I think like I just totally lost my train of thought. Just like overcoming those sort of like tragic stories is heroic and fun.
Absolutely. To overcome those things is great. And, that is almost to a point, some of the failings of, 5th edition with, their bonds, traits, and flaws is like they're built almost like a static, whereas there should be all right, this is what I have, but when I overcome this, when I'm no longer dealing with that flaw, what comes next? Do you just sub in something else? Is there some way to to do that? So like I feel that's one of 5th edition's issues, is with like other systems that have a legitimate flaw. Like there's a point cost thing of like, okay, well, I'm going to get 2 points for my character's build by taking this flaw. And as over the course of play, as I earn points, I can buy away that flaw when I feel my character has role played and overcome it. Or legitimately, the GM can say, all right, we're just going to scrap that off. You no longer have that flaw. And then you can either just go on without it, or if your GM allows, you pick up another one, sometime down the road after something were to occur. Well, hey, you know what? I've picked up a fear of fire after we, fought the pyro sorcerer who burned down a building that I got trapped in. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So like these kind of things are fun, but it's outside the spectrum of 5th.
Yeah, that game, the quest game that I was going to run for a Tuesday night group, one of the parts of character creation is your character's dream. And, it could be something tragic related, like, I just want to, overcome survivor's guilt or whatever, or, defeat some villain. It could be anything you want. But there actually is like references to it in the rules, like some of your role traits, be like, if you use this feature, while doing something directly related to your dream, like it has a different effect and things like that. And it also, the game accounts for like, if you naturally overcome this in the game, like you can pick a new dream, and it's like, it's cool if it's based on the stuff, in the campaign, but you can pick whatever you want, it gives you wiggle room. But yeah, just incorporating, to your point, like those sort of things to think about. And I think like maybe a lot of players probably do that subconscious, but it sure couldn't hurt to like put that in front of new players, to consider those sorts of things for sure.
So
That's where people like us come in, right? It's just like, whenever people are like, I wish they printed all this stuff in the books, it's like, yes and no, because it's like we kind of there's like a cottage industry of us that like, whoop,
yeah, it's
comment on that and do that stuff.
It's
if you're
definitely
listening to Wizards, like, keep some stuff back. Like, let us let content creators make up stuff too.
It's definitely fun to go down that road. Super excited. You mentioned the Quest game. I like learning new games. That I get to play and experience, and not have to be the one reading the rules and figuring it out.
That one's very rules light, but I actually I like. It really struck me the other day. I'm like, I like that that's kind of baked into the game, because it's like you're gonna want to pursue your character's goals, even if you're just like a crunchy gamer, because it's like, well, I want to do the cooler effect. So it's like you're gonna make a cool narrative just because you're trying to do the power gamer stuff, because you want to pursue your dreams and have new ones. So I think that's kind of neat, like kind of a clever way of doing that.
But we need to get through my game before we get to yours.
About that.
So I will remind you, for those of you watching now or watching in the future, my game is up next. The Moon Rises is done. We finished all 12 sessions.
It rose.
I won't give any spoilers as to how that ended, but it definitely led to link to next season when it gets around to Dave's turn again. But we've got to get through mine, through Doug's, and then through Steven's, and then back through Robin's before we get to that. So we've got plenty of time to kill before you'll see that. But so we are off for 2 weeks. The 5 of us will be meeting tomorrow night with yours truly as the GM for our session 0, even though we kind of had a preliminary talk about some different things. We've already got a game established. We are playing 5th edition, but we are not playing your regular game.
Yeah.
It's a game loosely inspired by the 3rd edition rules for X-Crawl. It is a futuristic.
But to your credit, you had never heard of that before.
Yes, indeed. I bought the book after the fact because I was told about it and wanted to see what things it might be able to, include.
Yeah, sure.
But it's Dungeons and Delving.
I'd never heard of it either.
Dungeons and Delving is a reality competition show where adventurers, plumb the depths of traps and mazes and monsters to win glorious fame and prizes. So yeah, lots of fun. We'll see how that all transpires. So tomorrow is the 5th, so the 19th, I guess, is going to be session 1 of that. And going back to Doug's earlier point, I'm thrilled and excited. But I'm also nervous as hell because I've never attempted anything like this. So
we got a good group of players and a great GM.
Oh, thank you.
But I guess the more like the older I get, and like thinking more different ways about just GMing side, it's our job basically. So it's like I think about RPGs a lot. But part of it is like, I guess it's at the end of the day, part of it's the worry that like the players aren't going to play, right? It's like, I don't have enough, I actually came up during Dave's chat today. They touched on it in a roundabout way of like, if like improv GMing is way easier when the players like engage with you in the game, right? Like if you got to pull them along, it's like, I can keep making stuff up and saying stuff, but it's just going to be a lot of fighting and me talking to myself as different NPCs, So it's like, but it's like that back and forth. It's a lot like performance and art and all, acting and all. That's why they always say like, oh, they're a great acting partner. They give you a lot. It's like, yeah, if you're not giving me anything to build on, it doesn't matter if you have a pre-written adventure that's awesome or you're just winging it. You're just like pulling that players along. So, to that point, it's like, I think it's going to be a great game because you're awesome at creating like fun challenges for players, and we all like engaging with each other in the GM to overcome them. So it's going to be.
And I've got some things that I want to do to try and invoke, that competition show vibe, even though it's going to be live. So it'll be interesting. Chris or Christopher in the chat, says Running Man 5e. To an extent, there's definitely, a good corollary there.
It's not like we're there against our will and like they're, people are rooting for us to die, right? Or
No, 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 no. They're the viewers at home want you to succeed and what have you. You're reality stars at that point in time, and maybe the first couple of dungeon delves, like, all right, you might not have people on your side, but as you do fun things and
like
nice
Ninja
Alex.
Warrior, but it's actually like more dangerous.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Now
Like, hey, if you suck right off the bat, people probably aren't going to remember you if you just fall in the water right away.
Right.
It's like, if you got up to the bottom of the level in like record time.
Then like, oh man, there's going to be some things that while the characters might not have an understanding of, like, oh, it's the warped wall, the players at home, or that the viewers at home, quote unquote, are going to understand of, like, oh no, it's this. So like, there's going to be things that are going to have a reaction.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
But then there are going to be elements where, like, okay, we're revealing for the first time this new layer or this new world. So like, I've already got thoughts and things in the works for how things are going to be introduced. My own character portrayal I'm still working on for the quote unquote host,
the MC.
Like, technically, Nerd Arcist Ted is still going to be there, and I'll represent some of the other characters and things.
You could just play yourself, play Nerd Arcist Ted. Maybe maybe it's Nerd Arcist Ted's head in a jar in the far future, where all this it's like the fifth age. And like your head.
That would be amusing, but that would totally not sit with the rest of the stuff I have.
All right. Sorry. I just brainstormed.
We have passed the halfway mark.
Oh.
I don't think in all of the years that we have done giveaways that this has ever happened before. So I want to do it before the person in the chat who actually won actually leaves. I don't know whether
go.
But again, I'm not going to lift up everything, but we've got a stack of books, the 1985 games, Dungeon Craft. We've got a dice tray and a set of metal dice from.
If you're in the chat right now, don't go anywhere.
We're our friends over at Easy Roller Dice. Fabulous stuff here.
Oh, man, look at all that stuff.
Numerous decks from the deck of many. I think all of the decks that are there have an MSRP of over $100 by themselves, and then the Gargantuan Red Dragon unpainted from our lovely friends over at WizKids. This is part of their Pathfinder Battles deep cut. I've got one painted. This is what mine looks like.
Yeah, you did a kick-ass job on that thing.
Totally love the red and black with like the bone white.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Concept.
And if you're lazy, you can just say it's like a smoke dragon and not paint it.
But
right?
It turns out, so the winner of this, as he's already said, is Tally Techman. Hope I pronounced that correct. And he's actually here in Jersey. So I'm going to do a socially distanced mask-wearing drop-off Wednesday night.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Super excited to pass off all of that to an awesome Nerdarchy fan.
So if we never hear from you again, we'll know where to start looking.
Yes, go look for him. But yeah, so that's awesome. So while there's only one WizKids mini there, don't despair, because next month, I've shown this off before, but the Magic the Gathering WizKids box Wave 13. I've actually already.
Yeah, there's like a bunch in there. Isn't there like 70 something minis in there or something?
It's not 70, but there's like 29. It's a good set. There's
that's cool,
that
man.
are huge. There's a cool giant, a cool demon, a cool sphinx. My favorite thing in here is there's a ghost council. It's got a base with like 5 or 6 ghosts that are clear plastic to put on top of it. So this is what we're giving away next month. And all of this is because of a warehouse at WizKids. They sent me an extra set. So
that kind of stuff's fun to look at it as just like it could be like a whole campaign inspiration too. It's just like why, how, because you could just progress from little creature to big old boss monster, It's like what ties these things together because they're pretty disparate. I think I saw a couple of questions in there. I'm gonna go scrolling back up. Yes, it was double underscore. Is it a bigger tragedy when games fall apart before the campaign concludes, or when you create a character eager to play but never get to? I'd say the former, because at least you get to play. Not playing is always worse than playing.
The game that falls apart when you have this incomplete story that's floating out. I've got so many characters that are like on a crux, like on like the cliff, ready to like spring forth into the next adventure or the next part of that story. They're there, they're waiting, and they have been waiting there for a very long time. Many of these in like third edition, there's a whole bunch of like, late end of third edition that like, they're not really all that important. Or the characters that I played in fourth, we didn't play them long enough.
I was going to ask you that because you guys often seem to very clearly remember, like, we played that for about 18 months. And it's like, that's a pretty significant amount of time if you play every Saturday. Like, you don't remember anything about those characters. Like, you guys never talk about that. I mean, I'm not like judgy.
Not at all. Not at all.
Curious
it's a tragedy that we haven't mentioned it. I just, the things that I've played, they just, we've said this time and time again. It didn't feel like D&D, and I don't want to criticize those who like fourth edition. I know there's plenty of people out there who thought it was superior. It incorporated a number of elements. It incorporated. I'm well aware. I try to do that, nicely, but incorporated the actual tactical elements of the game right within the rule set. There were a lot of great things that fourth edition did, and I'm not trying to ever say that it's a bad game.
Sure.
My critique was that it just did not feel like D&D to me. Everybody has their own opinions, and I'm not gonna say someone's opinion is wrong.
I bet you if you went back and rewrote it and like changed just the language where instead of saying like, it pushed a creature one square back, you say like you pushed a creature 5 feet away or like knocked them prone. I bet you people would love it because it's like, it just sounds that's what didn't sound D&D, I think, to a lot on not trying to start a dish war.
Trust me, I'm there. I'm on board with what you're saying. I don't know. And there's no way to go back and make those changes.
Yeah.
But I truly believe the designers behind fourth edition had the designs for, if we have the same wording, the same mechanics, we can incorporate video games, we can incorporate board games, all within the same rule set, and it'll work fine. It'll work great. And like, to that point, you see that there are fourth edition board games with the D&D line. There was people talking about, an online mechanic for it. I don't think it went anywhere because the popularity didn't take off like they expected. Speculation, I don't know.
That Neverwinter MMO sort of is like based on the fourth edition rules. But it's probably changed now. I mean, it's been around for like 10 years now.
But like, I remember, I played a wizard. I want to say an elven wizard, and
they were awesome in fourth. That was the first time you're like, oh, dude.
I remember powering up my at will that got to hit like a 3x3 grid, and I don't know if it's Thunderwave because I felt it was fire damage.
Burning Hands?
It might have been Burning Hands, but I know I got to a point where we were underground and there was like walls of eggs of whatever it was that we were fighting. And like, how are we going to deal with it? Like, we can't just sit there and stab every one of these little things. And the wizard's like, I got this. And I went and like, I called forth whatever my magic was. And I just, I wiped out 15 foot of these eggs with just
a national sign for Burning Hands.
So I always cross the thumbs when I do it.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
That's my
I
thing.
like that. I always picture like it's like sheets of, but I like that.
And I also sometimes like to put a little bit of
There's
style with
Doctor
it, and
Strange.
you like you flip it.
Ooh,
But I mean, not everybody wants to
that's
stylize
why
their
you burn.
hand
You
gestures.
accidentally face burning hands in your face. Like, oh, they're turning the wrong way.
But we all can't be as nerdy as Ted. So I implore everyone to try.
You're a nerd's nerd, man.
Always have been, always will. Live
Right.
long and prosper and all that.
One of the I like to look up the topics in D&D Beyond because it just searches
Sure.
all this stuff. So I came up with a few things. My favorite thing that it came up that it was mentioned is the tragedy of the Dwargar, who I often advocate are the much maligned line of dwarves who fought their way out of mind flayer slavery back to freedom, and then they're more closer to the surface dwelling kin were like, hey, get out of here. You're evil now.
Yeah, that is definitely a sucky thing. I mean, you can stem over into the tragedy of some of the monstrous humanoids, kobolds and goblins.
Yeah, a lot of
That,
subterranean life is pretty tragic in the D&D multiverse, just in general, right?
Being forced into servitude or bullied into whatever it is that they need to do is very, very popular and common within the lore.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you go by raw, the gnolls are pretty tragic because they don't really have a true sense of self. They are just essentially
Extensions of Yingu's hunger.
yeah. I say Yanagu, but
Okay.
everybody's gonna pronounce things.
Yeah, that's cool.
To even further, if you go by the by our worlds and the previous edition's lore for tieflings, they are beget of demon blood or fiendish blood, and they can be rife with tragedy when you're not born looking the quote unquote monster, but it appears at puberty. That leads to lots of problems, or can potentially. I know I've worked that into my own particular character's backstory when I played a tiefling in 5th edition.
Most earlier edition half orcs were a tragic tale of their existence.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of brutal lore and brutal wording in earlier editions of D&D. Between the and I don't mean to criticize any of the earlier writings by saying this, but what is widely referred to as the lazy man's out of the wizard did it. Has grown and moved into other areas, but I look fondly at all of those creatures and have made numerous more things besides what is there, because I totally love it.
Yeah, you love. What do you think's your favorite thing to come up with, like creatures or magic games? You love creating stuff.
I love both. Don't
Those two
me
things probably top though, right?
Yes.
Or it'd be more than like feats and subclasses and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, monsters and magic items, 100%. I enjoy coming up with them all the time, constantly thinking about it. I was watching the
Dave came up
Stranger
with a pretty good
Things.
one for the newsletter.
What was that?
Dave had a pretty good one in the newsletter this week.
Cool.
Monster feat.
I heard.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to see what he created there.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
But I was watching the Stranger Things D&D game that Chris Perkins ran.
Oh yeah.
And he talked about the camel shark, which, while camel shark rolls off the tongue far better than a shark camel, the way he described it
should be a shark camel.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sound very threatening.
No, it doesn't. So I'm waiting to hear. I'm waiting to see whether we get an eventual stat block for the camel shark. But when I hear the name camel shark, I see should have a camel head and a shark's body. not very threatening at all. But the way he described it would be amusing.
I didn't finish watching that. I'm kind of watching bits and pieces myself, but even that had a little tragedy and catharsis catharsis in it, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because one of the characters had a tragic backstory of their family.
Yes, his entire family was killed by a Yeti.
Yeah, and there's some catharsis there, right? I guess is that true? I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think and that's just a one shot too. So it's like
it's a one shot. I am not going to give any spoilers.
Sure.
If you want to watch it, go over to the Stranger Things YouTube channel. You get to see 4 of the stars from the show Stranger Things play D&D.
One of whom was on Nerdarchy live chat before as well.
Indeed, David Harbour himself. Sheriff Hopper was on Nerdarchy. Back in the day.
That was really fun.
That was fantastic. Dave has gotten to interview.
You guys were on that cruise with him too, right? Weren't you guys on that cruise with him too?
We were on the cruise. I don't think he was there, but there were some of the Stranger Things cast. He could have been. I don't remember seeing him.
Okay.
But there was a number of cool people on that cruise. And the members of Nerdarchy were there and had fun. There was a blast.
There was cool people on the cruise of Nerdarchy too.
And should that ever happen again, I would totally dig it.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I've never been on a cruise at all.
That was it for me, just the one.
So some other instances of tragedy in the official stuff is the haunted one background. That's like part of so baked into the background. And again, it's like I hope that a lot of players maybe you don't use all those back personality traits flaws for like the social interaction DC rules and inspiration, but I like to imagine that people at least use those things to make that like spark them to think about who their character is, right? So, and I only say that because it's like I know there's a lot of characters with tragic backstories out there, and that's totally cool, but it can be fun and rewarding. Like was my point I was trying to get to with the Stranger Things, to work through that. Even if there's and even if you're just interested in mechanics, like probably going to get some cool mechanical rewards out of it, whether you level up or if you defeat like this villain that has caused your tragic backstory. If you got a cool DM that actually does that, you're probably going to get some magic items and stuff too. Right? It feels cool.
There should always be, that extra thing, for the person who, has overcome, those moments.
Yeah.
But what would be a tragedy would be to not go through this list of names before our time is up in 10 minutes.
Nice.
So Doug is already, or we've already stated that Doug is running this month's fan game. And he's going to be running it. What was that date?
Sunday, January 24th at 4 p.m.
All right, so it's a little bit later, but it's still on the Sunday that we usually do. But it's always,
Yeah, that's always flexible too. Like if everybody's just like, it's too late, then
But so I've got the list of names here. It's Joseph Koss, and apologies if I say your name incorrect. Just call me a moron and I'll Mike Zipf, Jim Patia, Francis Suero, Eric Dodd, Rob King, Joshua Tunney, Matt Lehman, Anthony Cedrone, and Federico Fontanella. So again, I apologize if I've butchered or mispronounced your name. Sometimes I'm just an idiot, or we've got fans all around the world, so I am certain that my barely speak English to understand what exactly your name is supposed to be like. I'm just sorry.
But yeah, where do you draw those names from again? Honestly, that's not even just a setup.
All right. So every month we do a monthly giveaway. As we've already announced, that Tally had won those things. You can get access to them through 2 ways. One, supporting us on Patreon for even $1 a month automatically gets you an entry into that competition. We also have, you can go over to the website and fill out the contest and form section, mail that into our PO box, where you can, send that off to us, but only one per month per person, and then you automatically get entered into the list. We have, actually had one selected, from that method over the years of doing this. So it's not it's not a loss. But I take those lists of names, I put them into an Excel spreadsheet. I hit a random number generator that picks a number that's assigned to a line. I contact that person and say, "Yay, you win." Now, if you want a game with us, every month, I take that list of our patron backers, everyone who has signed up for Nerdarchy the newsletter and done the the double authentication to get access to the game with us section. That goes into a smaller list. Then I take that list, I take the Patreon list, and I pull out a list of 10 names. Those 10 names get sent to whoever is DMing that month. They email the players. Typically, it's 5 players. But, if, it winds up only being 4 or 6 that respond and the DM feels like taking it, great. So that's how you get to get in with us through those methods, how you get access to the giveaways, how you get access to the gaming with us. Highly encourage, typically this thing is a patron only chat, but because of the pandemic, the plague that is destroying the world, we open this up to everybody to get some extra joy, some extra gaming chatter to the world. So yeah,
it's been pretty fun. Geez, man, we were doing chat on Monday and Tuesday for a while there.
Yeah. But speaking of chats, we've got the Monday chat that Dave always does, or sorry, the noon chat Monday through Friday that Dave is doing. I mentioned that we've got a 2-week hiatus from our Tuesday streamed game. I'm going to be doing an interview with Nord tomorrow at 1 p.m. I think it's a YouTube thing, but I'm certain that it'll go out on our socials or their socials as soon as I gather all of the correct information. But yeah, I'm doing a thing tomorrow, so you can get some extra Nerdarchy in should you so desire.
Yeah, that should be fun. We've known those guys for a long time.
Indeed, I've got a handful full of their books up here. One of which is going to be making an appearance in my game.
Yeah, that looked really cool. I don't have that one, but yeah, that looked like it. That on the Kickstarter.
I know that this was a slight failing of mine as a GM, so I figured I'd pick that up, and that was one of the things that I felt has spurned me on to run the style of game that I'm looking to do.
Oh, really? Like that was part of so getting that was kind of led you down to that idea more, or just reinforced it, or did you get that because you had already thought of it?
No, I got that. I've begun looking at it, and it's like, okay, well, what kind of things are going to be more prone to traps? And as you watch things like American Ninja Warrior and that kind of stuff, I'm like, I wonder if you could do this kind of stuff with D&D. And incorporate combat and hazards and traps, and maybe it's probably not going to be full of puzzles and that kind of things, like your old style dungeon delves, but there's definitely going to be some things that I've got in the mix. But it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. I think it's going to be an enjoyable time, and it'll be cool to get into some of that exterior products that you guys might not be as familiar with. So
yeah, and a lot of their stuff, I always just feel like whenever I'm looking through Nord stuff, it's like I want to run a game and use this stuff. It seems like pretty easy to just incorporate. They're not like super convoluted or like long things you got to read like the whole book or whatever to to understand. It's just like this thing seems cool, or it'll just give you an idea. I thought I saw another question.
We have a question from _. Isn't it a tragedy that the live-action D&D movies weren't more successful? I enjoyed the one with Marlon Wayans.
Those are two very different questions.
It would be great if the line of D&D wound up becoming more mainstream with popular media, with like movies and TV shows. But I honestly feel that with all of the streaming services that are out there, with the success of Netflix, with the success of numerous D&D streams, there is definitely talks of doing some kind of D&D movie. I've even heard
Chris
that
Pine is attached.
I've heard that certain actors are being approached or that have already signed contracts. So something is in the works, but I don't know what it's going to be. Um, Dave has definitely talked about um, that there was a cool little mini movie called Of Dice and Men that
Mm-hmm.
kind of took the concept of the actual players of the game and incorporated that as part of the story. And would that be as successful? Because if you just make a D&D movie and you're making a Lord of the Rings-esque style fantasy, all that is just another fantasy. It's not incorporating the D&D elements into it.
Yeah,
It's
especially since, like, if it was just a really cool fantasy movie, for me, it's the thing that the magic of D&D is, like, nobody knows what's going to happen next, right? And it's like, obviously, even in of Dice and Men, which is a great movie, it's a script, so the actors know what's going to happen next. But in the context of the story, the play, it's different. You know what I mean? It's like the characters are playing a game where they don't know what's going to happen next in it, right? So, like, I don't think you could achieve the magic of D&D even if you had, like, all the trappings of it and, like, beholders and all that stuff, if
well,
it just
we
was
need
like
Beholder
people
Dorgar, right?
party adventures.
But if we're going to do a D&D movie, we need a Beholder Door Guard, right?
I mean, yeah, I don't know, like, you know what I'm saying? That's just, it's gotta, like, it's just just exactly what you said. It would just be a fantasy movie, and not like D&D that is like people going through this improv experience. That's
So I would not say that the D&D movie did anything to help the fans of D&D. There's many people out there who did not like it in the slightest. I think the concept of a low level thief sneaking into a high level wizard's tower, which is like right away the beginning, is just rather stupid. So I'm sorry you failed at premise one. But from the concept, they put in a lot of tropes. There is some funny. It is a good beer and pretzels movie, and that's as far as I will go with it. I feel that if we want to build more on the D&D name, putting a good fantasy movie out there, I feel will bring more knowledge to the name D&D than a Hollywood style of Dice and Men. Not that I have a problem with that style. I just don't think that, not that people are going to the movies, but I don't think people are looking for movie theater aspect of that style.
Right. Yes. Right. I know what you're saying. Like, even if it was like an Oscar-worthy movie, it's not going to do anything for, like, the hobby. It's like people that, like, watch this, like, compelling, like, human drama aren't going to be like, I want to play that game. They would just appreciate the acting. Even if the fantastical elements were, like, super, well done and looked, like, really cool and stuff. Well, actually, there is a movie like that, sort of. It's called I Fight Giants or something like that. It's not about D&D, but it's that sort of.
But the thing that most people who don't play RPGs, that they can realistically learn or understand, is that every work of fiction, every movie, TV show, book, what have you, all of that can fall into a role-playing game. All of it can be played with whatever rule set is best going to handle what's there. And believe me, while there is an array behind me, there is far more out there than I actually have, and many that handle those kind of things. I mean, I was looking up one-page adventures, and I've got a rule sheet printed out for sexy battle wizards, and what have you. So, like, there's crazy things that you can find if you're willing to step outside of the comfort zone of this wonderful world of D&D.
I know we're a little over, but I'm compelled to address Double Underscore's question. What if the movie was based on out of the box encounters? Absolutely. I'll give you an elevator pitch right now. It's a group of friends in real life who have various, human foibles and problems, but they either or they actually do get transported Jumanji style to a D&D world where they are themselves in heroic fashion. And of course, you would have big budgets, so they would look cool and not cheesy in any way. And the scenarios they find themselves in this fantasy world are from out of the box encounters, but they also speak to their human foibles. And by overcoming those challenges, they also overcome their challenges in the real world. And then if you want to get really esoteric about it, it's like maybe it was just their fantastical way of working through their problems when they didn't really go there, or maybe they did. Maybe they think they didn't, it was just a dream or whatever, but there's like a sword in one of them's hand when they wake up or whatever. So there's my elevator pitch. I even had
that would be a real tragedy if that didn't really happen. So I think we've covered the whole
we did it.
Of tragedy.
We made it, man.
if you are looking for more information, you should definitely sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, and there's plenty of time, from now till when the actual tragedy newsletter will go out, where some of these ideas will, be talked about in fine print or expanded upon, or maybe there'll be something else to do. So I thank you all for joining us. Come back, throughout the rest of the week and watch the live chat. If you have not already clicked that, subscribe button, please do so. We're getting really close to our goal. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy. Do 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 do.
And I clicked the button, and it's not doing anything.
I mean, I gotta keep looping that.
Yeah. You gotta keep looping.
Somebody make a GIF out of me doing that.
All right, now for real this time. Stay nerdy.